What is good, my wonderful people? Welcome to ENN, another episode of your favorite entertainment news podcast. We're back like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. Come with me if you want to live. Come on, I'm back. This is episode 48, and we're coming with heat. Boy, this episode is going to be extra spicy, I promise you. We got controversy brewing and bubbling in the entertainment news cycle, and we're going to cover it comprehensively and completely here on the Exiles Network News Podcast, as we usually do. So let's go. And joining me on this voyage into the cinematic wastelands are two anti-heroes unlike anything you've ever encountered before. Always down for the cause, always down to ride is my homie, Christian. What's up, brother? Welcome to the podcast.
It's another week, and I can't live up to the
Come
introduction.
on, man! You are the man. Come on, you are the man, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about our topics today. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome a new and returning member of the film Exiles. We have very good news. We're going to have a new rotating cast of characters to make the ensemble of Ian even more epic. And so it's my pleasure to welcome shooter in the house, Brandon.
Hey, good to be on the news network again after being exiled for liking snakes on a plane.
But exiled for a reason, baby. Exiled for a reason. It's been too many months since we've heard your voice. But I'm really happy that, you're going to be a regular from now on. We're going to hear you at least a couple times a month. Some weeks I'm going to give way to you. Some weeks Christian will give way to you. And we're just going to rotate the cast. How do you feel about coming on here and being more regular with our audience?
I'm excited. My favorite thing about film is discussion. So being part of a group that gets to talk about news and just the topics in general is just where the fun is.
Amazing. Can't wait. All right, gentlemen, strap in for the ride of your lives. Here is the rundown of our topics for the day. We don't have many topics, but they are so goddamn intense. HBO Max made the decision to exclusively stream Warner Brothers 2021 films on the streaming platform in tandem with theatrical release. And boy, has there been a fallout. So we're going to discuss the massive fallout, the massive reaction from different stakeholders. And we're going to do it coming from three vantage points. We're going to talk about the response coming from theatrical stakeholders. We're going to talk about the response coming from filmmakers, artists, agents, Hollywood insiders. And then we're going to finally talk about the studio's retort to the response. And then we're also going to talk about the recent social media reactions to Wonder Woman 1984. A select group of media people got to view the entire film, and they dropped some quick, short reactions on social media. We're going to react to those. And then in our coming soon section, we're just going to have only one clip to talk about, and it's from Wonder Woman 84, continuing the hype train towards its December 25th release date exclusively on HBO Max. An action clip was released at CCXP, and we are going to react to that. So, without further ado, let's do this like Buddhists.
I don't know how to react to that yet.
I don't even know what that really means.
Just go with it, people. Come on.
I'm going with it.
The train is moving. Hop on board or get run over. All right. So, in response to the constraints of the pandemic, specifically how it has ravaged the movie industry, Warner Media announced that every single one of their 2021 films will debut exclusively on HBO Max, same as cinema release dates. They smashed the theatrical exclusivity window. So, in short, the exact same day it hits theaters, if you're subscribed to HBO Max, bam, you can see the movies. Now, this is only for their US audience, and it will only be for the first 31 days of release. That's a fine print. However, this announcement sent shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry. I mean, we're going to really delve into the fallout to this announcement because the reactions have been visceral, to say the least. And we're going to talk about it from three different angles: theaters, talent, artists, and Hollywood insiders, and studios. So first up, before we go into the discussion, guys, I'd just like, a brief sentence. Just let us know, where do you guys stand as it pertains to HBO Max's decision. Let's just take a temperature of the room. For me, I'll start. I absolutely love it. I adore it. It's a bold move. It's a swing for the fences. It's audacious. It's the kind of move that I told our audience that Jason Kilar would make. All right. A little pat on the back to myself. When Jason Kilar was announced as the CEO of the entire, Warner Media, I told people that this is a maverick. This is a revolutionary. This is a guy who makes bold moves, and he makes very smart moves as well. He's a guy who does ruffle feathers because there's no half stepping with him. And I'm very impressed. I do have some reservations with, how things may turn out, how things were handled, but they are so minor. Christian, what is your instant reaction to the HBO Max decision?
Yeah, my brief reaction is that it was a very good decision, especially in light of the COVID pandemic and the accelerated trends that we've seen because of the pandemic. But on a personal level, I'm actually surprised that they had the balls to do it and go through with it. So it's a good surprise, but a surprise nonetheless. So that's my quick 30 seconds or less take on it.
All right. And Brandon?
Kind of the same way. I think it's the smart decision considering where we are in the world. I understand the hesitation from everyone else around, but it's kind of the future. And it kind of makes sense, and it's kind of refreshing to see Warner Brothers at the forefront for once.
Cool. All right. So now I've heard your reactions. Let's hear what theatrical stakeholders had to say. Now, they were kind of blindsided. Not even kind of, they were blindsided. They were given notice, but it was mere hours before the announcement was made public. So the announcement, all the analysis that was done for it was done behind closed doors. They didn't consult theaters at all. And bam, they said, we've made this decision. Here it is. And so obviously, theater owners reacted to this. The Independent Cinema Alliance put out a joint statement, and I'll just read a paragraph from that, which summarizes their stance. They said, unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. The Independent Cinema Alliance, however, is disappointed in Warner Media's questionable decision to release its entire 2021 film slate simultaneously in movie theaters and on HBO Max. Warner Media is correct that its content is extremely valuable, but it also must know that theatrical exclusivity is what drives that value, not streaming. Given that COVID-19 vaccines will begin distribution in the coming weeks, the ICA calls on our partners at Warner Brothers and other studios to help write the industry's comeback story with a recommitment to the exclusive theatrical content window. So this response is quite diplomatic, calling Warner Brothers their partners, giving hope with COVID vaccines coming on the way, acknowledging the value of Warner Media's content, but iterating that it's theatrical exclusivity, acknowledging that unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. This was a very diplomatic, very democratic, very soft power response. On the other hand, AMC Theaters boss Adam Aron, the CEO of the biggest movie chain in the world, had a bit of a stronger response. He stated, and I have to use my strong voice, clearly, Warner Media intends to sacrifice a considerable portion of the profitability of its movie studio division and that of its production partners and filmmakers to subsidize its HBO Max startup. As for AMC, will do all in our power to ensure that Warner does not do so at our expense. We will aggressively pursue economic terms that preserve our business. End quote. Adam Aaron, he came out guns blazing. At least he pulled out his piece and said, I'm ready to start shooting. He talked about how aggressive they will be in pursuing economic terms that preserve their business. He stated that this move is a sacrifice and it's only to subsidize the HBO Max. And using the word startup is very condescending, very intentional and condescending. So a lot more heat coming from the boss of AMC Theaters. And so in general, the theatrical response has been one of fear and unhappiness with this unilateral decision. So we have a case, Warner Media versus theatrical stakeholders. And for opening arguments, I'd like to know, where do you guys stand? Who do you think is right? Do you think things could have been done differently? Do you have any suggestions for future policy? And let's start opening arguments with Christian.
Well, I'm sensitive to their business model, and they have every right, the theaters and the owners, to feel the way that they do. And especially because theaters are a major part of the industry and they mean a lot to like local economies and social experiences that people have. And look, number one, we've already talked, and I won't go into any more detail. COVID accelerated trends. We've said it 1,000 times, no reason to go back into that again. But second, technology for home theater systems, they've only been getting better. And my experience now watching a movie at home since COVID had started, and I've really watched more like big movies at home, is on par or better than the theater experience, with some reservations, but still if you're going to talk about the majority, yeah, it's on par or better than that experience. And I think you want to be true partners. You want to talk about the future. Elevate the theater experience, and theaters, the chains, and the owners can all be a part of that. So you want to talk about being a partner? That's where you can be a partner. And some of the theaters, I live in North Jersey, so I'm right outside New York City. Some of the theaters in my area pre-COVID that offered more than just the movie. So better seating experiences, elevated food, video games, all these other things. They were packed all the time. They're packed all the time. And they of course, were a little bit more expensive than some of the theaters that just gave you a seat and then you could go order popcorn and that's it. It was just traditional theater. But everybody I knew that walked out of those theaters always walked out a little happier. So before I throw the football to Brandon, you adapt or you die. It's that simple. So you either got to adapt here or you're just, this is where things are going. And they can be a part of this. That's my feeling on it.
All right. And Brandon, what's your view on the case of Warner Media versus theatrical stakeholders?
So obviously it makes sense that theater business owners are concerned about the situation, or maybe even feel betrayed. But I don't know why nobody's being honest that the theater experience has declined considerably in the last few years. Mm-hmm. Not just going up in price or audiences being terrible to be around and not making it an experience worth going to, but also the quality of the picture. Local theaters are having lower quality bulbs put in, or they run them at half light so they can preserve the light a little bit longer, or they don't have the sound synced up. So you're going there and you're getting a half-assed experience anyway, because nobody cares. So now the situation's been turned on their head and they're like, oh, well, no, we want to be part of this. But like Christian said, I can do a better job at my house. I have a very nice TV. I have a very nice Dolby Atmos sound system, and I can rival 100% my local theater and borderline almost as good as IMAX or Dolby Cinema. However, I would prefer to see many big movies in a theater experience, but there's got to be a reason to go. Nowadays, I don't want to go see a comedy in theaters very often. I don't want to go see a drama or anything like that. I don't need to go see kids' movies theatrically, but I want to see big blockbusters that way, but I've got to have a reason. And in this case, I take the side of Warner Brothers, to be sure, or Warner Media, because they're giving me the choice on what I want to do. They're giving me the safety, and they're the ones that are understanding that the the situation has just changed. The COVID has messed everything up, and as much as the independent theaters are like, well, the vaccine is coming in the next few weeks. That's misleading. It's not. I'm not going to get mine till middle of next year, maybe. And I live in a country where half of the population isn't going to take it serious. So I don't know when the next time it's going to be safe to see a movie. But I know my living room is safe, and I have that choice on whether sometime in the summer I can go see a big movie at my local IMAX, or if I would just want to stay home and watch it with my subscription. So this makes sense. I'm all on board. Good for them for really seeing the situation and taking it and just being willing to crack a few eggs.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Very insightful. I really like the angle at which you came at that from, especially like going into COVID and the theatrical experience. And I echo a lot of what you guys say, but I'll go a level deeper. I have never been too thrilled with the economic model of theaters. Any model that's based on monopolistic practices is inherently flawed. You're essentially forcing people to see it in a particular way, which means that you very well know that that way is not the best. It's just simple logic. Because if the theatrical experience was the cultural touchstone, the boon, the on if it was just as fantastic as a lot of people claim that it is, then you don't need to make it exclusive to theaters. You could just, have it available in different competing avenues, and then people will flock to the best one. But they know that that's not necessarily true, and definitely not for everyone. Personally, as a consumer, I prefer consumer-friendly practices, and that's what technology has been able to do over the years, whatever industry you look at. Whether you look at photography, where photography became cheaper, became quicker, you didn't have to process it, and people could, do what used to be very complex alterations to pictures themselves on their phone with a simple filter, whether it has to do with, typewriters or huge photocopy machines. And, that's what technology does. It makes things easier for customers. And that is why the theatrical model is doomed to continue to dwindle and dwindle. I do not think it's going to die out, but it's on a dwindling trajectory. And they're fighting against the tide. No matter whether they try to, smooth things over or they're more aggressive, whatever stance they take, they're both toothless stances. And Warner Media, as a creator of the content, is going to be around. Direct to consumer is the future, and it is their fiduciary duty to make sure that they are very strong for that future. And so in this Warner Media versus theatrical stakeholders case, I am squarely on the side of Warner Media, but I do sympathize with theatrical stakeholders because their business is dwindling and the trends that were coming were accelerated by COVID. So they've been blindsided, so to speak. But this is not Warner Media's fault. And it's not Warner Media's duty to take care of them in this very difficult time. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people have been hit hard by this pandemic. Some of them will be able to make a comeback. Some of them will not come out of this hole. But luckily for us in society, whenever we experience structural changes, one of the things that people do not account for is that even though it's painful, there are pressure relief valves in society from which labor can flow into. So people will lose their jobs as the theatrical industry shrinks, But because the theatrical industry is shrinking, it means other industries are going to rise. For example, the streaming industry is going to become bigger, and workers from the theatrical industry or from other industries are going to go on. There's just going to be a reshuffling, and that's what happens when structural change happens. So just to wrap it up, I'm squarely with Warner Media. I think that it's an inevitability that was accelerated by the pandemic, and honestly, I just think that the response from both stakeholders is toothless, and it's not Warner Media's duty in any way to cater to theatrical stakeholders. They have to do what's best for them, and they're doing just that. If they weren't doing so, they're irresponsible business people. Okay, so really good points from all of us. We took different approaches, brought up different points, but I think we're basically, of one mind. And after looking at it from the point of theaters and Warner Media, let's talk about talent, Hollywood insiders, filmmakers, okay? Those people who collaborate with Warner Media to make the content. They were not collaborated with on this decision. It was 100% unilateral, and they didn't take kindly to that. If you thought theatrical industry stakeholders had something to say, oh boy, Hollywood talent, artists, agents raised the roof with fighting words. Quite figuratively, they put Warner Media to the sword. Loudest, most controversial statements came from the great Christopher Nolan, a favorite of so many people. He's been really bullish about the theatrical experience. I mean, he was probably the only director that penned a letter to the public and people about, saving theaters during the time of COVID. He's so romantic about his notions of viewing movies in theaters and what it means as a cultural touchstone and how ephemeral and fantastical it is. And yes, I am speaking with a lot of snark and condescension because I do not agree with him. So in these statements that he made, he put his name behind them, he put his weight behind them, and he went directly at Warner Media. This is what he said. He said, some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before this decision was made, thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio, and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service, referring to HBO Max. Wow. He also said Warner Brothers had an incredible machine for getting the filmmakers' work out everywhere, both in theaters and in the home. And they're dismantling it as we speak. They don't even understand what they're losing. Their decision makes no economic sense. And even the most casual Wall Street investor can see the difference between disruption and dysfunction. To another outlet, he said, it's a unilateral decision that the studio took. They didn't even tell the people involved. You have these great filmmakers who work with passion and diligence for years on projects that they are intended to be feature films with fantastic movie stars. And they've all now been told they're a loss leader for a fledgling streaming service. Other stakeholders had things to say. One top talent agent said, never have this many people been this upset with one entity. And we also hear that Denis Villeneuve is not pleased with the decision. He's releasing Dune, which is a huge, just incredibly large-scale sci-fi epic. It's planned to be a trilogy. James Gunn was not happy with the proposed back-end deal amendment they sent to him to compensate for the money that will be lost due to it not being, a completely exclusive theatrical release. So I mean, suffice to say, artists are really incensed, pissed, disappointed, and they made their voices heard. So in Warner Media versus the artists, where do y'all stand? Christian, let's hear your opening arguments.
You got a lot in there. I'm a musician myself, so far be it from me to go against artists, but I'm going to do it I'm going to do it. One of these things that could get you canceled here. A guy like Nolan has secured his spot in the upper echelon of directors. I think we all know that, but whatever, I'm going to say it. His comments just drip with elitism. They just drip.
Agreed.
I mean, grasping at something that he no longer has any control of. Laughing at that old picture, the old guy yelling at a cloud. Anyway, the comparison to me with Napster, and I want to be very clear that I'm not advocating going off and pirating movies or getting free music or anything like that. But back in the day, the record companies, and in many cases the artists themselves, did not understand and they didn't see the digitization of musical content coming. Apple recognized it. They built iTunes. They licensed everything. Amazon Music then exploded. We got Spotify and all these other services that came out. Legit, by the way, legit ways to get people content after Napster, with all the sharing and the piracy. And now artists can get music directly into their listeners' hands in legit ways. So in my opinion, with movies, it's the same. Direct to consumer is the future. And the last thing I'll mention for me is, because the elitism is really pissing me off, but that's a major slap in the face to great original content that's come out from Netflix, from Amazon Prime, Disney, HBO Max, anywhere else. So only Nolan's content that should be in theaters is inherently better, basically, than the content and all the artists that's making that content that's going onto streaming, whatever. It's just an elitist comment. And in my opinion, it's just a huge slap in the face to all those other creators and all the other people that are pushing out wonderful content. And we've seen a lot of great stuff that's supposed to be coming down the pike. Stuff from Ridley Scott that's going on HBO Max, whatever. It's just it really rubs me the wrong way from somebody who's become one of my favorite directors. And I go back to what I said before, adapt or die, man. Adapt or die. So yeah, I don't know. I've said enough, but I'm really rubbed the wrong way by the elitist comments, and I think they have to be, a guy like Nolan has to be prepared for what's coming. You got to be ready to roll with it, man. You do.
Brandon, what about you? What are your arguments for or against Warner Media or the artists?
So, I mean, obviously, I'm on the board that Christopher Nolan is one of the greats. Absolutely, I love seeing his films. They're smart, they're brilliant, whatever. But again, like Christian said, his elitism is very off-putting. He's not the greatest director in the world. The greatest director in the world works for the biggest streamer in the world, which is David Fincher. And I'm sorry, if Fincher is willing to put his entire catalog...
arguable, but yeah.
Arguable, but yeah, to me...
Okay. At least I'm not going to argue hard against you. I'm not going to be like, oh, that's fucking bullshit. No.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really argue that he isn't at least one of the best, but he is exclusive to Netflix, and it's why. It's because him as an artist gets to do whatever he wants.
Right.
How are we pretending that Warner Brothers, when they went to bed 2 nights ago, that Warner Brothers was the best studio? They haven't been for over a decade. I mean, the last time they were an amazing studio was before Emmerich took over. He's kind of driven that thing into the ground. So they went to bed working for a subpar studio that destroys our artistic vision, and they woke up with somebody that's like, well, we're trying to be like Netflix. And what's Netflix like? They're all about the artist. They don't always, renew the stuff that they should, but they stay away from their artists and they let them make their content. And guess what? Now they're best picture contenders. They're up for Oscars. They know what's up. They are good at what they do. So, when you look at Nolan, it's like some of these things were meant to be an experience. They're meant for the theaters. We can't cut them out. Nolan can't even adopt new theater technology like Dolby Atmos, the basic thing that comedies have. He can't put in his $200 million movies. So does he really care about the theatrical experience to not adapt at all to even update for theaters? I don't see it. He makes fantastic movies, but if he can't even adopt new technology for his own films, he can't adopt a new system. Now we are in a system that has become overblown, and our budgets are massively too high, and they are paying actors far too much money to be in these movies. And now the expectation is if it's not $1 billion, it's a bomb. and we got to get away from that. You got to start. I mean, some actors are going to make a little bit less money. Some directors are going to make a little bit less money, but we might end up with a better product for it. We might end up with an easier future for consumers for it. But we cannot continue to be making $300 million movies and expecting to be working with the most artistically free studio in the world. Just look at what happened to Peter Jackson. The Hobbit movies killed him because of Warner Brothers, and now Warner Brothers is finally at the forefront of doing what's right for the industry, and they're like, oh well, now they're the worst. So I don't believe it, but I really do not like the elitism that's coming from it. I understand, but you got to be willing to adapt, and movies aren't not going to movie theaters. They are going to both in a pandemic in the middle of everything else of a system that was already kind of starting to fail anyway. It's just he can't see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And let me start with Christopher Nolan. This guy, the unmitigated gall and the oh my goodness, I just want to scream at this guy. It's so ironic that someone so smart can be so dumb, okay? He has no idea what he's talking about. He is so wrong on so many levels, which must be hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around, because we know this is one of the most brilliant, intelligent filmmakers out there. He's always talking about the theatrical experience. He's talking about it from a perspective of a cinephile. It's a very niche taste level, okay? And while we may not want to see that go away, because a lot of us enjoy watching films, a lot of us enjoy watching films shot on film, but you cannot try to mandate that as a mass marketed, mass production thing. It's not economically sound. It has been proven over and over again that streaming is the future. So for him to dismiss streaming and for him to act like it is not worthy of the greatest attention and the greatest investment is absolutely dumb. He made the statement, even the most casual Wall Street investor can see the difference between disruption and dysfunction. What are you talking about? Even the most casual Wall Street investor can see that this is where you should be putting all your eggs. Do you know who the biggest studio in Hollywood is? Nah, it ain't Disney. Nah, it ain't Warner Brothers. It's Netflix. Their revenue year on year makes other studios look like they're not even trying at all. During this pandemic, when there have been a bloodbath of layoffs because studios haven't been able to put out content and make any money, they've had to fire so many people. The only studios that have been able to keep things going and stay afloat, Netflix, they've been going from strength to strength. Disney Plus has suffered a lot because obviously they have a very large portfolio, not just films, but also theme parks. But because of Disney Plus, at least their stock has been kept afloat. So they at least have, cash and valuation that they can draw upon. But other studios have been suffering because they haven't made the investment that these streaming leaders have made into their platforms. So not only is he wrong, he sounds very dumb. And it's quite ironic that Christopher Nolan, who forced Warner Brothers to put Tenet out when they did not want to, they knew that Tenet would make a loss. Everybody and their mama knew this movie will not make a profit because, one, they pandered to him by giving him a bloated budget for this kind of movie. The movie is the most expensive original production ever made. Why don't studios usually give this type of money to these type of films? Because it's not the IP that has a baked in audience, and then you just have to, sprinkle some hype on top of it. But they said, it's Christopher Nolan. He's made a lot of money for us. We will give him everything he wants. We will stand by him. They did right by him. Then the pandemic hit, and everybody knew that movies were not going to be successful in theaters. But he insisted, because the theater is a cultural touchstone that we need to support, and we need to, save cinema. And that's what he wanted to be, the savior of cinema. And the movie flopped. It lost money. Its worldwide total is about $356 million. This is a movie that cost $200 million just to make. On top of that, Christopher Nolan gets 20% first dollar gross. So that means that 20% of the revenue alone before it makes profit. 20%.
You know what, Lupe? And I apologize for interrupting you, so I want you to hold your thought.
No,
that,
go ahead.
Going back to what we said about Napster, and I'm a big Metallica fan, dude, they said the same shit back in the day. They were like, this is about saving the music industry and saving artists' integrity. Like, that's what it was almost exactly the same shit when they went crazy and they were trying to stop the digitization. Yep.
It's all excuses and this sort of pie in the sky, non-tangible. This is not gonna help anyone trying to save their business and make theaters are dwindling. I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Nolan, end of freaking story. And for him, who put out not only was his movie gonna lose money, and Warner Brothers stood by him, he was luring people to theaters to put themselves in danger and also to put the community at risk by spreading a virus during a pandemic. The fucking unmitigated gall, the entitlement of this a-hole, it's asinine. And I'm telling you this as a person who says Christopher Nolan is my second favorite movie director. I'm gonna have to knock him down a couple pegs because we got people like Fincher out there making really fantastic movies. My favorite movie of the year is actually The Gentleman. Tenet is number 2. So I'm really so upset at him and everything he's talking about with all these great film work makers who have worked with passion and diligence for years in terms of feature films with fantastic movie stars. Like, what are you talking about? Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci are on streamers, and calling HBO Max a fledgling streaming service. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's gonna be out there for so many people, for more people to see. Would you prefer that it was in theaters and then it has the stink of being a box office flop like Tenet, which people barely saw? And think about it. Tenet is the best case scenario for a pandemic film. We're talking of Christopher Nolan, a Christopher Nolan movie, a Christopher Nolan action movie, like his best. Like, this is Christopher Nolan at the height of his power, not being able to break even. What do you think is going to happen to other filmmakers who have no track record, who have nothing behind them? If Tenet is the best case scenario, then Warner Media did the correct thing. And the reason why they did it is because they saw how Tenet failed. They said, we'll put Tenet out. We don't think it's going to do great. And they gave it a clear runway. Like, the irony is that he forced them to put this movie out. He did not allow them to delay it because he wanted to put it out there to save theaters. But because it flopped, it ended up accelerating the doom of theaters. It's squarely actually his fault. And just to wrap it up, I know I've spoken far too long. I love artists. Whenever it comes to corporations versus artists, I'll always be on the side of artists. But clearly, Warner Media was very right in this decision. They had to make a unilateral decision because if they negotiated with artists, there are way too many of them to have a smooth, fast-moving, agile, instantaneous turnaround. There would have been so many log jams, so many delays. That's even if they were able to be successful with this. They would probably have ended up being, delayed by court cases and legal barriers and what have you, and negotiations. They may have had to do it with half movies or a few movies, but they made a bold decision, which is the way you make these kind of decisions. Go all in, no half stepping. Every single movie, HBO Max. And to be sincere, they did make a compromise, because if artists are saying these movies need to be seen in theaters, they're still going to be in theaters. The only difference is that for people who can't go or who don't want to go, they have the streaming access to it. It opens it up to so many more people. So,
and Lupe, isn't it? It's a 30-day, right? It's only 30 in the United States. It's just 30 days.
30
yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Yes. After that 30 days, you have to go to theaters to see it.
Or wait like everyone else, right?
Or wait like everyone else.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll just wrap it up by saying I love artists. I'm always on the side of artists, and at this point, the only thing I'm concerned about is the compensation for the artists. I do not want the artists to be shafted in terms of their back-end deals, and we've seen them do a pretty good job, and they have a pretty good track record of making artists whole. I do not think that they're going to just toss artists to the side. Gal Gadot ended up getting back-end compensation that valued Wonder Woman's success as a $1 billion movie. That's very generous of the studio. Very, extremely generous. They didn't value it like it was a movie that released during a pandemic. They valued it like it's a summer, tempo that released during the height of theater's powers. So I think that all the chagrin and the gnashing of teeth has to do with money. It doesn't have to do with, it's being released here or not released there, because it's going to be in theaters like usual. It has to do with the fact that they have money tied to back-end deals that have to do with theatrical performance, and HBO Max is definitely going to cannibalize that. The threat of piracy will also cannibalize some of that. So once they're made financially whole, it's going to be all good, and I hope that they are. The person that I'm most upset with is Christopher Nolan, because of how aggressive he has been about this, how insulting, elitist he has been about this every single step of the way. He put people's lives in jeopardy by luring them to theaters with Tenet, by risking an explosion and increased spread of a virus during a pandemic when we're supposed to be doing every single thing as citizens to lock down. And he's been going on about this theatrical experience, and Warner Media has been in his corner from day one. So for him to bite the hand that fed him is absolutely terrible. And I feel that Warner Media need to stop cuddling him. Like, this is what happens when you cuddle people and you bend too much to their will. They become entitled. And I think that it's about time that somebody showed Christopher Nolan that, dude, you ain't gonna talk to us like this. Like we're not here for this. They've done everything in their power to cater to him, and this is what he does. Shits all over them in public. It's absolutely horrible, and I'm severely disappointed in him. And I have zero sympathy for him. Like, what is he gonna do? Cry tears into like his golden diamond studded toilet? Like, dude, stop whining. Adjust. Everybody's going to take an L in this pandemic. I'm sorry, guys. That was such a long rant. I sincerely apologize, but I really had to go in on Christopher Nolan. I really had to.
It's understandable. This whole thing, especially, is it invokes an emotional response as well as like a business, logical response. There's also, when you hear stuff like that, it was the same way for me, going back to what we were saying about music. It's the same. It's like just very like, what the fuck, you immediately. Exactly. So I understand it invokes an emotional response.
Like he's so out of touch. It sounds like, when Eminem said something to the effect of, people who pirate movies are taking food out of his baby's mouth. It's like, there's a pandemic. People are losing their jobs. There's so much suffering going on. People are trying to control it. And then the studio, comes up with a solution that is a compromise, and people are going to be able, consumers are going to be put first. Consumers are going to have this incredible choice, and you're shitting all over it, like just so out of touch.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we've made arguments in terms of artists and Warner Media, and I think we're a little bit all over the place on that one. I get the sense that all of us are quite sympathetic towards artists, but we still appreciate what Warner Media, has been doing, and I think that Nolan really put his foot in this one, because not too many people are happy with him. In this case, I only know of one person or a couple people who fully support him in this. So if you're a big Nolan fan, if you think that he's 100% right, I mean, go ahead and hit us up in the comments, shout at us, yell at us. Let's have like a very friendly debate, or let's fight like brothers do. It'll be fun. We'd like to hear from you guys. So in any court case, at the end of all the sessions, we give the floor to the accused to make closing arguments. And so Warner Media executives have responded to the harsh backlash from theatrical stakeholders and from Hollywood filmmakers, their collaborators, and two very important people in the Warner Media chain of command issue statements. John Stankey, who is the AT&T head. This guy's he's a big shark. When you talk about CEOs in the entire world, not just Hollywood, he's a massive shark. He's the head of the entire AT&T. And Sarnoff, who is she's directly under Jason Kilar. She's the chair and CEO of Warner Media Studios and Network Groups. They both made statements. So we'll start with John Stankey. He made a series of comments, and he's someone who's very direct, very in command. He doesn't get shaken at all, and he's the type of person who can really steer a ship through turbulent times, and I think that's what he's doing. To surmise, he called it a win-win-win, referring to all the stakeholders. He acknowledged that I know there's a lot of noise out in the market, people with different viewpoints. Anytime you're going to change a model, it's going to create a degree of noise. So it seems like they were quite aware that there was going to be a backlash. They're not blindsided by this. He said, "We knew we needed to try something different. We think it's a great way to penetrate the market faster. This is one of the arrows in the quiver for us to do just that." In discussing the content that they've created and they've not been able to put out, he said, the question was, what's the best way to deal with these assets? He said, in our case, we had a fair amount of content in the pipeline, and because of the pandemic, we were facing an inability to take that product out to consumers. What they didn't want to do was license Warner Brothers movies to compete in streaming platforms. He said, from our perspective, going and giving that content to significant competitors is probably not the most intelligent way to deal with that. He stated, we've given customers choice. We've allowed the industry to have this transitional moment with day and date release strategy. It still shows our respect for theatrical venues by not pushing our content exclusively to streaming, and it's smart by not handing it off to our competitors. So I really like the things that he said. He came at it from different angles and talked about how everybody is winning from this. Definitely AT&T, HBO Max are winning from it, and the theaters are still having a bit of compromise. He talked about how it's being done in a staged way. They're putting films out intermittently rather than snow plowing the content. meaning, moving all of it to the back half of 2021. He said smoothing that out is frankly the best interest of not only us, but those who create the product. And then Warner Brothers CEO Ann Sarnoff also had things to say. She said, we've been trying to figure out the best way forward for the last 8 months since we first went into lockdown. She cites Tenet as one of the reasons why they had to come to this decision. She says, we learned from Tenet about people's inclination to visit theaters right now. We were hopeful more people were going to see Tenet in the US, but the US is not ready. She continued, we're working through the system with our talent and their agents. I think the more they see the visibility of how they will get paid, we're finding that people are understanding the economics. And this is unprecedented. So anything new is always a little bit difficult to work through for the first time. So John Stankin and Sarnoff have come to the defense of their decision. What do you guys think of their response? Do you believe them? Is there anything else to add? Do you think that they could have done things differently? How do you think things will play out in the future? Will they regret this decision? Let's start closing arguments with Christian.
Could they have done things differently? Sure. I mean, you can always, hindsight's always 20/20. So you could look back and say, how they handled the decision, how they wanted to move forward, whatever. Are there ways they could have communicated this better to some of the artists or to the theater? Sure, I'm sure there are. It's probably beyond me at this point to break all that down. I would need some time to really look at all this, and we need to see how it all plays out. But again, I'll repeat, hindsight's always 20/20. So looking in the past, they'll say, we probably could have done this better. But no matter what, this is the technology we wanted to support, so they're going to move forward with this technology. The bottom line is that, number one, you have to spend a little bit of money to make some money. So they're looking at potentially a shorter term loss for a longer term gain. If they're charging $15 a month, you get 50 million subscribers. Well, you're getting to, okay, now you're in a good spot. And that's at least a start. Who knows where they could be beyond that. So they had to make the decision, I think, about controlling their own content. Disney did the same thing. When everything starts to expire off Netflix, they're going to take all that back. And you want to watch all the stuff that they have, you got to go to Disney Plus. And it's the same with HBO Max. You want to watch DC, you want to watch Warner Brothers content, legacy content especially, which is fantastic, got to go to HBO Max. The second thing to me is just borrowing an old term, an old banking term, an old Wall Street term. It's what the market will bear, man. That's it. The conditions, the consumer demands, that's what's driving all this. So along with innovation and a shift to direct to consumer, they needed to get a foot out in front of all this. They were already kind of left behind. If you thought about it, you, me and Paul have talked about this a couple of times in the pod that, Netflix is just out of control with the number of, subscribers they got. And, Amazon Prime has a ton of subscribers. Disney Plus is humming along doing their thing. They needed to do this, and they needed to differentiate themselves. And they have given themselves a value proposition moving forward that is really unmatched with all the rest. When you're talking about actual theatrical releases getting released for a 30-day window for anybody that is spending $15 a month on their product. So I'll end it with that. I don't think it's even about taking sides at this point. They did what they needed to do, and their response is the right response. Mm-hmm. Everything coming from the top is the right response, because if they didn't, if you're not growing, you're dying. It's that simple. They needed to stake a claim now, because who else was going to take? So, I mean, it's just, anyway, I'll leave it at that. But I think they needed to stake their claim now.
Okay. Well, Brandon, what do you have to say?
Well, I have no doubt that the decision was not easy to make. There's just so many aspects of it to where it had to make sense from a corporate standpoint. And, one thing that nobody seems to realize is that with the next 2 years and all that happened in 2020, the marketplace for movies in theaters is going to be massively saturated.
Right.
The way that they're talking just Warner Brothers movies, it's one movie every 3 weeks is going to be coming out in 2021. That's 17 movies. That's just Warner Brothers. So you figure you've got all the other studios coming out. These guys are going to be cannibalizing each other at the movies for the next 2 years. Nobody's making money. Nobody's going to be making tons of profit. It's all going to have to come from streamers. And paying a subscription fee, because big movies are going to make $100-200 million now. That's the reality for the time being. But you also have to look at your competitor. When you have somebody as powerful as Disney that can take a tentpole movie at any point in time and put it right next to your movie, knowing that they're going to cannibalize your business intentionally, how do you get around that? You can't just keep moving your chess pieces because they're going to chase you around.
Yeah.
That's the power Disney has. When they bought Fox, when they bought Marvel, when they bought Lucasfilm, they can now put a giant movie anywhere they want to and fuck with their competitors just for fun, because they can do it and they know everybody's going to show up and buy and give them money. But the one thing they can't mess with is, oh, I can just stay home and watch this movie. You don't have to worry about going up against an Avengers movie or a Spider-Man movie, because guess what? You can release Dune at home and everybody with HBO can log in and watch Dune however they want to, and then they can go and everybody else can fight it out at the movie theaters, because like I said, you're going to have 1, maybe 2 weeks of box office dominance, and then it's going to be a drastic drop because another massive movie is coming out. So streaming is, especially for the next couple of years, is going to be the saving grace of these studios. And if they lose, then there's no content anyway. So why even worry about what the theaters think? Because they're going to go out of business because there's nothing coming to them.
Right.
That it's as simple as that. Business decision. This just makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Very well said. I will agree with you guys in terms of, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of nuance to this conversation, and we've gone at it, from different angles and tried to, really get down to the nitty gritty. But if you had to, stick with just one, I think Warner Media, they did what they needed to do, and they did the right thing. As Brandon said, great metaphor you used. They had to crack some eggs in order to make an omelet. Now, people will say, okay, why didn't they, talk with their artists or talk with, theaters as well? It wasn't going to make any difference in terms of the economics of it. Their minds were made up. It's one of those things. Like, all that was going to happen was it was going to delay the decision being made, and that decision needed to be made right now. And also, that decision, the discussions needed not to be leaked, because they have competitors who are also strategizing. And the way these things work in terms of narratives is that if you're not the first to do it, you're seen as copying. There's also momentum that builds. So now, if Disney decides we're moving all our movies to Disney Plus, they copied HBO Max, and HBO Max is going to be seen as the innovator and the groundbreaker. So that was very important for them to keep it a secret. And I think the most important thing that people need to pay attention to is a couple of key words that I've heard Ann Sarnoff, John Stankey, and Jason Kilar use. And that's that Warner Media is changing to a consumer-driven business model. And I think it's absolutely brilliant, because I'm a consumer. I can see how this will rankle and ruffle the feathers of theatrical stakeholders and artists as well. For theatrical stakeholders, unfortunately, I think that the writing is on the wall, and I think that it is not in anyone's best interest to cater to them at all. I think that industry has to think really hard about how they're going to gracefully downsize and adapt to what is going to be a leaner future. It's inevitable. All that they're trying to do by strong arming with toothless threats and empty leverage is delay the inevitable. It's not Warner Media's business or fiduciary obligation to cater to them in any way. Now, in terms of artists, yes, they need to have a good relationship with artists. I think it's pivotal. I think it's very, very important. However, they had no choice in this instance. Like people say, ask for forgiveness after you've done it. And that's exactly what they're going to do now. And I think that at the end of the day, The artists, once they're well compensated and they understand the constraints, they will come on board. And also, the studio will owe them in terms of goodwill for future projects. They'll owe them one. As for Christopher Nolan, he is inextricably linked to the theatrical experience. So if anyone does anything that hurts theaters, he takes it personally. So I don't really see that relationship being as smooth as it once was. He is just so out of touch. And I would not be surprised if he leaves Warner Brothers or starts making, films for several other studios. But I think that's perfectly fine. I think that Warner Media will survive without Christopher Nolan. He's a feather in their cap, but they cannot tank their entire business and jeopardize their entire future just for Christopher Nolan. So I'm very glad that finally Warner Brothers has moved from being archaic and like dinosaurs and come into the future with a tech company at the helm, making very bold, aggressive, future-seeking moves and being consumer-driven. Because at the end of the day, we, the consumer, are who are going to benefit the most. And that wraps up our discussion on the fallout from HBO Max's huge smash mouth decision. We'd like to hear what you guys think about the discussion. Really hope that you learned a lot from it. And with that, we'll pivot onto something really cool and something more lighthearted, and that's Wonder Woman 84. Social media reactions to the movie were dropped on the internet. Some lucky social media persons got advanced screenings of the film that's going to debut on HBO Max and in theaters on the 25th of December. Merry Christmas! And so these are some of the things that they had to say. Eric Eisenberg said, huge news. Wonder Woman 1984 is fantastic. The story is excellent and has a great, timely message. It packs a ton of surprises and amazing work with both Cheetah and Max Lord. Get hyped because it's the real deal. Megan Damore said, although the villains are so wonderfully layered, Kristen Wiig excels in the role of Barbara Minerva / Cheetah. The chemistry between her and Gal Gadot is unreal. Pedro Pascal adds a lot of fun as Maxwell Lord. She said Wonder Woman 1984 was worth the wait. Between the stunning visuals and resonant emotional beats, it's a piece brimming with charm and confidence. Okay. Jermaine Lucier said, yesterday I saw Wonder Woman 1984 at home, and it was everything I needed and more. The movie's hugely ambitious, incredibly exciting, and full of much needed hope. It's also a very, very long film to a fault at times, but mostly reminded me how wonderful a big blockbuster can make you feel. And he saw it at home. Jenna Bush said, watched Wonder Woman 1984 last night at a virtual press event. It was wonderful. Kristen Wiig is phenomenal as Barbara. The opening 10 minutes will bring you to tears. I absolutely loved it. Okay, so those are, some of the reactions. There are a lot, and, I think a running theme was about how hopeful, it's fun, talking about love, talking about, these values. Max Irv said, it's rare that a sequel avoids being a rehash and makes huge bold swings. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Pat Jenkins movie never gives into cynicism, and we love them for it. 1984 takes a while to get going, but once it does, it's fresh and exhilarating. So, guys, what's your take on the pretty much unanimous praise for Wonder Woman 1984? Did you hear anything that got you more excited? Did you hear anything that got you less excited, which would be counterintuitive, being that all the responses are quite positive? And are you looking forward to Wonder Woman 1984, December 25th, theaters and HBO Max? Let's start with Brandon for this one.
So I'm someone that tends to ignore all the hype in advance. I don't read a single review. I don't watch the trailers. I want to go in with a clear head. However, I do tend to get weary of anything that is unanimously praised, because I tend to find that they're letdowns, especially lately with DC.
Mhm.
The last couple of movies have been unanimously praised, and I walked out of them heavily disappointed. Uh, so in this case, like I have hopes for it. I very much enjoyed the first Wonder Woman, but I have not been a fan of DC films in a few years. So I can't wait to make up my own mind. But either way, the positivity actually, oddly enough, worries me a little bit more than it makes me feel more sound. But either way, I will give it a fair opinion, and I won't read a single review to try to sway that opinion at all by giving me things to think about when I'm
Mhm.
walking into it.
Mhm. All right. And Christian, what's your response to all the positive energy and hype that's being thrown by this social media reactions? We didn't see one uh, significant criticism. Maybe I saw one or two nitpicks. Someone said something about the runtime. I think two people said that about it getting going and it being long, but generally it's been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, I mean, my needle is the same on this. I mean, I'm on the record. I've said it numerous times in the podcast that I'm excited to see the movie and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm still looking forward to it. That hasn't changed. But I'm like Brandon. I tend to at least make the attempt. I'm not going to say I'm successful at it all the time, but I at least make the attempt to ignore reviews, whether they're both positive or negative. Doesn't matter one way or another.
Mhm.
I try to ignore the noise because that's what it becomes, is noise. But I think my issue is the narrative that seems to be coming out. Like there's clearly a bias. It's there and it's real. And the reason I say that is because of what my mutuals have shot over to me. Like a lot of the same words are being used in a lot of the reviews that I'm seeing, like the same exact phrases.
Mhm.
So, and it seems like is there a little bit of a dig? Like, are they making a little bit of a dig, or is it just like they're just unanimously together? And that's something that does concern me a little bit. I will say a very minor side note. This is very small. 2020 has really sucked. It's
Mhm.
really, really sucked. This is a dark year, and I think people are looking for anything in their entertainment that makes them feel like a little bit better. Um, so I think this represents a smaller amount of that bias. I want to admit that,
Mhm.
but I think that there is something to be said that people are like, I just want to gravitate towards something that makes me feel a little bit better about life because 2020 just sucks a fat one. So that could be it. But you're right, because the negativity I've seen is not from the reviewers. It's from my mutuals that are everyday people like us. Like, we're not
Mhm.
influencers or anything. Those are the people that already had a negative, like they're kind of predisposed to hate this movie already, are hating it. Like, they're like,
Mhm.
oh, it's just ridiculous. I can't believe. So they're already like blasting it. But the actual reviewers, influencers, it's been one, like, I'm not seeing anything that they're actually like coming out and saying, hey, like, there's something about this movie that doesn't click. I liked it, but no, it didn't really. No, it's just fucking
Mhm.
awesome all around. So yeah, that I agree with Brandon. My excitement level's the same, but it has to raise a red flag. Why are they going that route? Why is it all being like? Why is it all the same? It's
Mhm.
just all the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I agree with both of you guys. Now, I was I don't expect this movie to be anything other than what it's going to be, and that's just your typical modern superhero film, kind of vacuous, portrays and celebrates values that it doesn't really delve into or tackle in any meaningful, real way. Quite hollow uh, in that way, and a lot of the reviews have confirmed that bias, that expectation, right? We're hearing a lot about hope and humor and fun, and these are the same words that are used to praise many Marvel movies and just light-hearted movies that have no weight to them, fluffy material that don't really make you think. They're just easy breezy fast food. They taste good in the moment, but they don't add any nutritional value. They're not, the tough vegetables and fiber and meat. So that's a little bit disappointing, but what's to be expected? To be sincere, I mean, what do you expect? from the creators of this film. Jeff Johns is one of the creators. He's known as someone who's quite vacuous, panders to the gallery. Patty Jenkins is also proven to be that as well. More of a politician. Talks about, love and hope and caring and sharing, without really diving into the complexities of how difficult those values are in such a flawed world that we live in. On another note, did anybody expect that any of these people would have anything negative to say about this film? For many reasons, this is the sort of film that they are primed to praise to the highest heavens, regardless of what it was like. One, it's a female-led film by Hollywood darlings. I mean, do you want to be the person that's bashing, a superhero movie directed by a woman and made by and starring a woman? Those movies have a hard time as it is. Do you want to be the brave person to pile on and say this is not good enough? Also, there's a lot of groupthink that goes on in their circles, so they're all pretty much going to sound alike. So suffice to say, this is expected. Doesn't move the dial one way or the other, to be sincere. Maybe dampens my enthusiasm a little bit, because I do not trust the opinions of these people, and they make this movie sound like it's a Marvel movie. Nothing wrong with those movies, but to me, they're not the movies I get the most excited about. Movies like, something like Logan, movies like something that's come from like a Zack Snyder or Christopher Nolan, or something that's just a little bit edgier, a little bit deeper, a little less sugar coated and candy coated. So that's a long way of saying that for me, the social media reactions didn't do it for me. They actually dampened my enthusiasm. But I guess it will be good for for people to see a new blockbuster, and they're part of the marketing engine. That's all this is. It's marketing.
I'd also like to add that as a Snyder cultist, I'm actually kind of excited to be able to separate the two now, because the last DC movie that came out, we still did not have the Snyder Cut announced. So every DC movie came out, I had my mental barrier of, this is the replacement for what was taken from me. And now I feel like with the Snyderverse kind of coming back and being rumored to be full on again on HBO Max, I can look at this as a separate thing, as its own thing,
and not have
judge it as part of the replacement. Like when I watched Shazam, I was like, we really gave up this for this Nickelodeon movie. I don't have to do that anymore, because I'm going to be getting what I love.
I agree with that to an extent. Yeah, like for me,
I could go in with less prejudice in this movie, and I might be able to have some fun.
Yeah,
and that's okay now.
Yes, I know. I was always able to make that distinction. I've always been able to view a movie as what it is. Like, okay, this is not what I like, or this is not meant for me, or was changed. But let's view it as a movie, and talk about it on its own merits. But it does grant a sense of calm, and there's a feel good feeling to know that, okay, this is Patty Jenkins' version of Wonder Woman, but I'm also going to get Zack Snyder's version of Wonder Woman, and that's wonderful, because everybody eats,
with the same actors, which is just kind of cool.
Which is kind of really
think
cool.
About it.
Really,
they
really
can
cool.
Have everybody play two different versions of the character.
Absolutely. So those are our reactions to the social media reactions. Guys, I want to hear what you guys think about everything that was posted online about Wonder Woman. Overwhelmingly positive stuff. Are you like super hyped and looking forward to it? It's not far away now, only about 2 weeks. And those are our discussion topics from the day. And it's a perfect segue from Wonder Woman to our coming soon section. In our coming soon section, we react to brand new trailers or clips or any sort of exciting news about something coming soon to you. And we have a clip from Wonder Woman 1984. It was presented at the CCXP down there in South America. We love you, our South American audience, who probably doesn't listen to us yet. But this clip, it's an action clip to, give us a little bit of a taste of what the action choreography is like and the tone of Wonder Woman 1984. It's a car chase, and Wonder Woman is showing off her superpowers. So let's start with Brandon. What's your reaction to the clip?
So as I stated before, after usually the first trailer, maybe the second, I tend to ignore all content leading up to release, whether it be posters or stills, behind the scenes shots,
Okay.
Clips, the soundtrack. I ignore everything.
Okay.
However, it's impossible to ignore when you're scrolling through Twitter, and every other post is this clip. So I have seen moments of it, and it looks more fun and more playful, but to me it lacks physics. It lacks that grounding in reality that I've become used to, kind of that Nolan kind of brought into this.
Mm-hmm.
And it does tend to be a little bit more playful, and you have to have a little bit more suspension of disbelief. There's moments that I've been able to catch because I haven't watched or listened to it that look like they could be cool little action beats. But it looks more like a fun action scene and not an intense action scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a distinction between the two. It hasn't made me more or less excited. I think it looks a touch goofy, but I kind of expected that anyway. So I'm happy to continue ignoring it and watching it on Christmas Day.
All right. And Kristen, what's your reaction to the Wonder Woman 1984 action clip?
You like Brandon, I've already seen way too much in the trailer, so I tried to make a conscious decision here not to watch the entirety of the clip. Also because to me an out of context clip is something that I've seen create narratives for other movies, both positive and negative, before. But like Brandon said, you can't stop it. I've seen still photos of it. I've seen about 5 seconds of it, really the scene where she's pushing the truck, I think. So I've seen about 5 seconds of that. I'll reiterate a little bit of what Brandon said. Looks like a fun, slick action sequence. There was also a playfulness to it, so I'll repeat that. But I'm not going to go too nuts on this one yet, just because again, it's something that, okay, personally I haven't watched the full thing, so okay, I have to admit that. But again, an out of context clip, when I've already seen the rest of the trailers with the improved VFX that I seem to really like, especially the way Cheetah looked and some of the fight sequences looked like they were better. So yeah, I don't want to go too hard on this yet, but I will say this. If you were all in and you watch the clip from the reactions I'm watching, it seems like if you're all in, you're still all in. And if you were against it, you were like, F this, I'm done. So it didn't seem like it really helped to move the needle one way or another, except keep people in their camps. That's what I've seen in the conversation online. So we'll see what happens. I'm still pumped for this thing. So I still want to watch this. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, when we talked about this movie in the run-up, I did say that I was looking forward to seeing it. There are things that I really like that I've seen in the trailers. For example, like Wonder Woman's golden armor. I really like it. I do hope that it has a good reason for being there. The VFX do look good. The image quality looks fantastic. Shot on film, the palette, color grading, lighting, fantastic. Also, Cheetah's final form, bellissimo. On point. And the length, the runtime, actually 2.5 hours, which some people find as long, I find as perfect. That's what I love. Long, to me, it just indicates that it's meatier, right? It's not just a fly-by-night presentation. However, this assassinated all my hype. This ran up on my hype like a ninja and shivved the hell out of my hype. It looks terrible. Brandon used the word that just stuck in my mind. Goofy. It's goofier than 2 left feet in Charles Barkley sneakers. You know those horrible, like Charles Barkley branded sneakers from the 90s, like they were trying to compete with like Nike, and
Terrible.
they were terrible. Yes, it's goofier than that, or masterpiece sneakers, whatever you can come up with. My goodness. It reminds me of like Looney Tunes. You know the way like Roadrunner like runs? That's how like Wonder Woman was running. It just looks like a mess, a joke. And to me, it's so disappointing. Yes, we can talk about artistic freedom and her interpretation, and also have the right to think that her interpretation is just horrible. I mean, I've seen clips of her swinging from lightning. Like, what is going on? It looks really bad. And I grew up watching Looney Tunes and, seeing Roadrunner running through the desert in Arizona. And that's exactly what this scene reminded me of. She was like Roadrunner, like running in the desert. It's so horrible and goofy. And we're talking of an epic warrior from the Amazons, like bred for battle, bred for war. And you turn her into this whiz bang comedic. It's thankfully the Snyder cut is in a couple of months. I'm so I can watch this, as Brandon said, and just let it be what it is, and know that an amazing character that Zack Snyder created hasn't been butchered, because it exists in pristine form on another outlet. And that's it. That's our reaction. We always try to end our comments on sections with asking about impact and favorability of clips. There's only one, so I guess we don't really have to go into it. For the clip, I'll say it was really bad. These clips are supposed to make you more hyped. They picked the wrong clip to make me more hyped. They would probably have done better with something super dramatic. This reduces my hype meter. It's not my favorite, and the impact is negative. Christian, what about you? In terms of impact and how much you like it, what's your verdict?
It's probably partially unfair for me to really make a verdict, because I didn't really watch the entire clip. And so I'm trying to stay away from like some of the noise that I'm seeing, but I haven't moved in terms of whether or not I'm still hyped and want to see the movie. I'm still there. Okay. And I still really want to see this. So I think it's a little unfair for me to make the judgment.
All right. Okay. And Brandon, any movement for you?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said any movement for you in terms of your hype meter.
So I'm actually going to tie this all together, because I like we've said, it's kind of hard to say yes or no, because I didn't necessarily watch the clip or give it the attention because I didn't want to. This is going to tie everything we've talked about together, though. I was not planning on seeing this in theaters when it came out.
Oh, neither was I. I
was going to skip it, but guess what?
I would have seen it.
I'm going to watch it on day one on HBO Max.
Same.
So if that doesn't tell you the relevance of what Warner Brothers just did, then I don't know what to tell you, because I will be watching it on Christmas Day in 4K in Dolby Atmos by myself. I'll put my phone in another room and I will watch it. This clip, the little bits that I've seen, would not have made me go to the movie theater and see it. There's nothing there that says, oh, maybe I should go. But I'm going to watch it on December 25th, and we'll talk about it, and I'll give it its fair approach, because of the decision made by the team at Warner Media. We get to do that. And now I get to watch a movie that I didn't intend to see because it's available to me.
As a paying HBO Max subscriber. Exactly. Yeah. You're paying every month. Yep.
All right. And that's the perfect way to end our episode of ENN. It was really a robust decision, very spicy. I really appreciate the fact that you guys came at this no holds barred, and that was pretty awesome. So let's wrap up and let's say goodbye to our audience. It's been a hell of a discussion. Christian, say goodbye to the people and tell them where they can find you on social media.
Agreed, man. It was good, and it was good to have Brandon on. because I haven't. Oh my God, I don't think I've been on a pod with you for a while, man. So it's good to have you on. If you want to hit me up on social media, you can catch me both on Twitter and Instagram at the same place. It's at chart6363.
Nice. And Brandon, thank you for joining us. And we are excited about, you being a regular on the E&M podcast. Say goodbye to the people. Tell them where they can find you on the social medias to yell at you exclusively.
All right, easy to find me. I'm at _meatball_84. You can't miss me. I've got Joss Whedon Superman with a mask on. Wear a mask, and let's go to Twitter and talk this out.
All right. And I have been yours truly, as usual, Lupe. You can find me on Twitter at LiveLoveLupe. You can also find me on the various social media app at LiveLoveLupe. So till next time, wherever you go, whatever you do, remember, stay exiled.